my science journey. I trust that you're okay wherever you are, whether in Africa, whether abroad. Today, we are honored to be hosting Dr. Shola. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, who's a senior researcher fellow at the Queen Mary University of London. He'll be sharing or telling us about his journey, and hopefully we can pick one or two things from those. So I'm just gonna jump in straight. Before I start the conversation, just to remind you to let us know where you're joining us from in the chat. So if you could type in the chat and tell us, your name, where you're joining us from, we would appreciate that. And then if you have a specific question for Dr. Shola, you can start typing it in the chat box as well, so that by the time we get, to the questions, there is still more time to address them. Remember, we only have an hour, so you have to capitalize on that. So if you have a question, this is your time. All right, so we're gonna jump in, Shola, and I'm gonna start, with a non-science thingy first before we jump into the science. So an icebreaker. What is something that people will be surprised to learn about you that isn't on your CV?
I think there could be quite a number of them, but the immediate one is the fact that you wouldn't expect somebody who is doing genomics now to be somebody who had had some academic struggle. So I had some academic struggle, and specifically my first year in science class, I was asked to stop coming for chemistry classes because I was failing chemistry. So I didn't leave. I still stayed there. I continued my chemistry classes. I was still not doing well, and unfortunately, the teacher left when we were in year 2, and we couldn't have a replacement, even up to the time I was writing my West African examination, which was the final exam you write when you are finishing in high school. Yeah, I failed chemistry many times. And when I finished my final year exam, when I was leaving secondary school, I failed most of my subjects as well.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't see that in my CV.
Yeah. Of course, we wouldn't see it, but looking at your journey and how far you've come, I mean, it speaks to the resilience and actually following your passion, And I'm glad that we are having these conversation today, so that if anyone is also going through such a phase, they can clearly relate and know that nothing is a limitation. If you want to chase something, you can still do it. So that's a good point to start. So I know you've talked about, failing chemistry and, even, now you're pursuing a career in genomics. But can you speak to us about, your career journey from, undergrad? I know you did all your BSc, MSc, and PhD in Nigeria. I think a lot of people will be very interested to learn about your journey and then how you progressed to now being in London now and with the work that you're doing.
Okay, thank you, Ruth. I did my first degree in biochemistry at Olabisi Onabanjo University. And when I finished that, we would do 1-year mandatory service, which you call National Youth Service Corps in Nigeria. And after that, I went to do my master's. So right from my undergraduate, I had known that I wanted to pursue my career in academia. Okay, so people were buying GMATs, which was common then in Nigeria, if you wanted to do job interview and all of that. But I knew I wasn't going to do any job that would require me to do GMAT, so I didn't buy it. I didn't do it. So when I finished my NYSC, during my NYSC, I also had the opportunity to do postgraduate diploma in education because I knew it would be useful for me since I'll be in the academia. So when I finished, I was waiting. I wrote an exam to do my master's entrance examination. I wrote the exam and I was waiting for the admission, which will come out in about 6 months, to start the master's program. So during that time, I was trying to see what I could do, and I wasn't sure whether I would get the admission or something. So I started going for different interviews, and at that point, I was borrowing GMAT that I thought I would not need. So eventually I was going for one job interview, and right there, I felt, no, this is not what is for me. I really want
Yeah,
to be
this
in
is
the
not for me.
academia. I really want to go
Yeah.
and do my master's program. So eventually I got
Yeah.
into the master's program and I spent about a year on the program. I finished with
Mm-hmm.
distinction in MSc. My BSc was 4.28 out of 5, which was
Mm-hmm.
second class upper division. My
Mm-hmm.
master's, I was the best graduating student in my class during my biochemistry MSc class. I then was waiting to do my PhD, which I also started almost immediately after my MSc, so which was
Yeah.
also MSc in biochemistry. So all along, I wanted to do something related to molecular biology and genomics, which
Yeah.
was the passion I had had from 300 level when we were doing one course that time during first semester of our 300 level.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to stick to that goal. And it never left me, okay, that I
Yeah.
really want to stay in this area doing molecular biology, doing genomics. And I'd written it down from my founded level that I want to be a professor of molecular biology.
I love that. I love that.
So
Well,
it's just a way of
yeah,
following my passion
yeah,
all along
yes.
the way.
Yeah, and also speaking things into existence, we look forward to you being professor soon. So, and then we'll
Yeah,
come
hopefully we'll
back to
get
this
there.
story. Yeah. Welcome everyone that is still joining us. We are My Science Journey, as you can see from my cape and the background here today. And we are with Dr. Shola, who's just shared his career journey in Nigeria. And Dr. Shola, I just wanna, put you on the spot and just ask you about, for someone that is probably still studying in Nigeria or someone that is studying anywhere in Africa, can you speak to us about your experiences studying in Nigeria and how do you think, that sort of like formed the foundation to your career path today?
Nigeria, I mean, studying in Nigeria, which I would also believe might be similar to what happens in most African countries,
Yeah.
will really, really be very difficult
Yeah.
because of the environment,
Mm,
because of the way the curriculum is structured, and
yeah.
because of the people we have as lecturers,
Mm,
Um, part of the challenges I faced was that we would
mhm,
have more students than the infrastructure could care for. You
mm,
know, I could remember throughout my 100 level, I hardly sat down to receive lectures. I was always standing up,
yeah.
because we were so many in the class. And many of
Mm,
my colleagues will come to class at about 5 a.m., about 6 a.m., to
yeah.
come and take a seat for lecture that will start at 8 or at 9,
Yeah.
But I looked at it that wasn't going to favor me, so I never did that. I never struggled to get a seat. I was always standing up. So you could see how difficult that could be learning under that kind of environment.
Yeah.
But apart from that, the other challenges which you will see is that there were a lot of works that the lecturers have to do. Okay, so the
Mm,
students to lecturer ratio
yeah.
was so massive, and they will not
Yeah.
be able to cater for you adequately, which was not
Yeah.
their fault. So it's about
Yeah.
the environment, it's about the structure, of the
Yeah.
country. So that's
Yeah.
part of the challenges which we face.
Yeah.
So that, because the lecturers will not be able to have that one-on-one relationship with you to know what are your learning needs, what are your challenges, and how they can cater for such needs. So we don't
Mm,
have such.
yeah.
And then we see that in the way the lecturers teach. And in most cases, it's more like the survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
So there's nothing that gives an adjustment to your environment or to challenges you have.
Yeah.
Everybody is treated equally, which is not so.
Yeah.
So that would be one of the major challenges I would say. And to really
Yeah.
navigate that,
Yeah.
um, anybody who went through that and came out successfully
Yeah. Can
needs to
survive
be
anywhere,
praised.
basically. Well, that's good to point out because I was gonna ask, how did you overcome those challenges, to get to the point that you are today?
Yeah, so for me, number one is know yourself. So
Mm,
I asked myself, what do I think would work for me?
mm-hmm.
Okay, so I knew one, there's no amount of complaints I could do that will take the
Yeah.
problem away. The problem is systemic. It's not what I could control. Okay,
Yeah.
so how can I adjust to the environment? So number one, know yourself. Number two, instead of complaining, adjust and make the best out of it.
Yeah.
And the other thing which I was also doing was I would do a lot to make sure I speak to people in classes above me. So when I was in other
Mm-hmm.
level, I had people who were in 200 level. I would ask them what were the problems they encountered with this course, with this lecturer, how did they navigate and all of that. I would get past questions for to copy them and all of that. So I was doing a whole lot of things like that to prepare myself for the exams, ask questions and all of that, which is still the same thing, whether it's talking about writing an examination or talking about career, talk to people who are
Yeah.
ahead of you, who have navigated through that. They will have a long way to help you to go through that. So I really enjoyed that because I was speaking to people and then they were telling me this is how to do and all of that. And I figured it
Yeah.
out. This is the best way that can work for me. And
Yeah.
I didn't care what other people were doing. And I was passing on my courses, in 300
Mm.
level, all the biochemistry courses I did in 300 level, I had 5.0 in all of them. So,
Yeah.
it's about knowing yourself,
Yeah.
adjust with the environment because you can't keep complaining. Otherwise, things will
Yeah.
keep passing you by. So I would say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So know your environment, and then, speak to people that are ahead of you, and, I want to come back to that before I even summarize the other points, Shola. To when you spoke about speaking to people that are ahead of you, I am presuming you're speaking about mentorship and its importance. And I would want you to also highlight, who are the mentors that have played a role in your journey, and what did they do that you felt made an impact in your career?
So part of what I do is where I want to go. In most cases, I'm not the first person to go there or to get there. Some people have gone
Yeah,
ahead of me.
yeah,
There are no two journeys that are exactly the same.
yes,
Okay. So even if I tell you this is the pathway to success,
yeah,
do A, B, C, D,
yeah,
it's not going to be true for everybody because
yeah,
everybody has their own path.
yeah,
What we know is when you have attained the success, you can
yeah.
now connect the dots.
Mm,
Okay, but you can't play out working it one step at a time and say this is
yeah,
what guarantees success. It's not
yeah,
exactly the same.
yeah,
However, you can learn from that. So what I'm
yeah,
saying is if Professor A or somebody has done this before, if you do
yeah,
it exactly, it's not a guarantee for success.
yeah,
However, you can learn a lot from it and not
yeah.
make many mistakes. So there are people I would say they have gone this way, and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't mean that I have interacted with them one-on-one. I
Yeah,
and up to now, I try to read about people, what are they publishing, what are they doing, where were they trained. So
yeah,
it gives me it gives me inspiration, it keeps me going,
yeah,
irrespective of my background, for instance, in my background, not that I had a mentor as a parent, so
mm,
you struggled by seeing people around, what are they achieving? And you think, no, look, I have to be serious with my life, I have to be purposeful with my life and all of that.
mm,
So I watch people a lot and I try to see what are they doing and what can I learn from what they are doing. So
mm,
that's part of my mentorship. So for instance, while I was trying to get into the university, there was a physics teacher who was an assistant lecturer then at the University of
yeah,
Agriculture in Abeokuta. Now he's a professor at Redeemer University, Professor Vincent now. So
yeah,
he was very instrumental to changing a lot of my perspective, my perspectives in terms of what do I want to do, So he was a physics teacher and I learned a lot from him and then also
yeah,
from quite a number of people. And then when I
yeah,
got to the university, we had many lecturers, but I had one lecturer too who was teaching us protein biochemistry, now
yeah,
Professor Ajani. So I learned a lot also from him just by observing him, the way
yeah,
he would teach, and then you would think, oh, this is the kind of person I need to emulate. And then in terms of career, even at the moment, there are people I see, that I say, oh, I like what they are doing. I would like to come closer to them. And I've also been fortunate to work with people as line managers who are also taking me as a mentee, and we
Mm,
have that
mm,
mentor-mentee
mm,
relationship,
mm, mm.
which is also making me to thrive in my career development.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Shola, what would you say was the turning point for you in your career trajectory? Like, what was that trigger that you felt like, this is it, I'm moving towards, the direction that I envisioned for my life?
Yeah, I think the major turning point for me was the postdoctoral fellowship I did at King's College London with Dr. Stefan
Mm,
Menzel,
mm-hmm.
which I started in 2020.
Yeah,
Um, Before that time, while I was doing my PhD, in fact, before I started my master's, after my first degree, I just felt I would like to go abroad to
yeah,
study more.
yeah,
Money was not even my focus at all.
yeah,
And then long time ago, I've told people that if you really want to be rich, like be
yeah,
the richest person in Africa, don't go for
yeah,
science. I
yeah,
mean, maybe I will have gone into banking or into IT.
yeah,
So it wasn't really money, so to say. I just wanted to learn more. The academic environment in Nigeria, which I know it is the same thing in many African countries,
yeah,
it was very as rigorous as it was in terms of the environment. The curriculum was very rich.
yeah,
So I had that strong theoretical foundation, okay,
yeah,
from biochemistry and all of that. So I just felt now that I've understood this, how can I
yeah,
apply this to life? How can I make
yeah,
sure this I can engage, I can do an engaging science that affects people's life on day-to-day basis. So
yeah,
I didn't see that within our system. So I wanted to go to
yeah.
a system where I could have that kind of science. And that's why I was
Mm,
looking for master's and PhD. Unfortunately, I didn't get any. So I just felt, okay, let me do what I could do. Let me do my best. So when I finished my PhD, I
mm-hmm.
already knew you could do postdoctoral fellowship. It was also
Yeah,
not common then. I don't know
yeah,
how it is now, but it wasn't a common thing that you will hear people say. After
yeah,
PhD, people want to start lecturing job, or maybe they
yeah,
had already started as an assistant lecturer while they were doing their PhD. But for
yeah,
me, I knew you could do postdoctoral fellowship. So doing postdoctoral fellowship was one of the major goals I had.
yeah,
And I was targeting that. Okay. And eventually I got that in 2020. It took me
yeah,
some time, but eventually I got it. And that was the starting point, the turning
yeah,
point. And the reason why I wanted it was that I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to improve on my skills. I don't want to be a local champion. I want to go to
yeah.
conferences.
I
I want
love
to go
that.
to conferences and
Yeah,
talk to people, engage with people in what is current in science.
yeah,
Okay. I want to publish a paper that I will know that I'm publishing with my peers. I'm not behind. That's the kind
mm,
of science I wanted to do. And I didn't
yeah,
have that kind of opportunity during my PhD.
yeah,
I was fortunate to be working at Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria at that time, even while I was doing my PhD.
mm,
Okay. But and then they had a lot of facilities. So I was using the facilities in the laboratory to do my PhD project.
yeah,
So I would stay long in the office after work hours, and the office was not far from my home, and the
yeah,
office also was just opposite my university. So
yeah,
sometimes I would come to work on Saturday and Sunday just to be able to work in the lab as part of my PhD. So that facilities helped me, but I wanted more than that.
yeah,
And that was the goal I set for myself for my postdoctoral fellowship. And I had that
mm,
opportunity at King's College with Dr. Stefan. So
mm,
with Stefan, I had opportunity to learn new skills, improve what
yeah,
I already know, and
yeah.
then the rest is history.
Yes. So did you then move from King's College London to Queen Mary University?
Yeah, so when I had 3 years contract with Dr. Stefan Menzel at King's College.
Yeah,
So when I were about to finish the project, and the contract was also going to finish. So I was now
yeah,
looking for another postdoctoral fellowship or research fellow position. and Professor Segun Fatima brought an advert that he was looking for a postdoctoral fellow who would work with him on a project in
Yeah.
collaboration with one of his collaborators at University of Cambridge. So
Yeah.
I didn't want to apply, you know.
Why?
Yeah, I just felt the application was very long,
Yeah.
and I felt, would they take me, something, I mean, self-doubt,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
and that's part of the things I also learned, that in life, do your best to show up at every point in time. Don't
Yeah.
self-exclude, don't
Yes.
self-exclude, avoid
Yes.
self-doubt,
Yeah.
put your best foot forward, give it
Yeah.
a shot, who
Yeah.
knows? You might think you are not qualified,
Yeah.
so the imposter syndrome, that kind of a
Yes.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but one of the students I had mentored while I was doing my PhD, he was doing my
Yeah.
master. So he's in the
Yeah.
US now doing his PhD. So he just saw the advert and said, "Oh, please, I saw this advert. Would you apply?" Because I had told him that I was looking for another job. So I said,
Yeah.
okay, so this may be a confirmation for me to apply. And then I applied and they called me for interview. Oh, okay, let's go. And then I got the
Oh.
job.
Oh, amazing, amazing. And Professor Shegun is an amazing scientist and mentor. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm gonna pause
So that was
now
at
and
London School of Hygiene.
oh, well, that was while he was still at
Yeah,
London
while it
School.
was London School of Hygiene. So at some point he
Oh,
left, moved to Queen Mary, and then when he
yeah,
moved to Queen Mary, he had the position which was advertised
yeah,
as well and all of that. It was also competitive,
yeah,
and I was fortunate enough to also pass the interview, and
yeah.
now I'm at Queen Mary as a senior
And now
research
you are
fellow.
doing
Yeah.
Mary. Yeah. I think there's a lot for people to learn from your journey, Shola, especially because I know a lot of African students try to look for, jump on the next master's abroad or the next PhD abroad. But it's good to remind them that in as much as there's opportunities abroad, there's still opportunities back at home that you can capitalize on. And studying at home doesn't actually hinder your progress because, for some instances you could actually progress in your career. So yeah, I'm glad that you're sharing this journey so a lot of people can pick that uh from you as well. So yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you for that. So I'm gonna pause here and just check. I'm just checking YouTube. So Chioma says, Chioma Onido from Covenant University, Nigeria. Hi, Dr. Shola. And just to encourage everyone, please type in the chat. Let us know where you're joining us from. If you have a question for Shola, please type it in the chat so that he can respond to them while we are still having this conversation. So yeah, I can see a lot of people on the chat. Please just engage with us on the chat so that we can get through the conversation. So we have, I think, around 30 minutes left as it is of now. So capitalize on that. We don't want to start asking questions when we are close to hitting 4 p.m. my time, which might be different from your time. Okay. So yeah, we've talked about your journey and where you are at right now. But I would also want you to speak about the opportunities that came along your way that you think opened the door for you, in addition to just like you've talked about postdoctoral fellowships that you took up. But are there like trainings, collaborations that you think helped open the door for you? Can you share that with us as well?
Okay. Um, I think in life, whether in science or in any field that we are in, one of the
Yeah,
things that would help us most is when you have people around you that can speak for you when you are not there.
I love that. Yes.
So quite a number of times, a lot of discussions go on behind you, and
Yeah.
then somebody can recommend you or
Yeah.
somebody can speak on your behalf. So
Yeah.
one of the people is Dr. Stefan Menzel at King's College, and I still
Yes.
work with him at the moment. I have a senior research fellow, honorary senior research fellow position with him. So I still work with him
Yeah.
at King's College. So one
Yeah.
of the things I enjoyed with him, and I still do, is that it speaks to people and he has very high regard for me, even as a mentee working under him. And
Yeah.
sometimes when he speaks about me, I wonder, is he talking about me? You know, yeah.
You're like,
So that
it's
means, I
someone
mean,
else.
we need somebody like
Yeah.
that in our lives. And one of the things he did for me that time, which he still does, is to introduce me to people. So he was
Yeah.
connecting me with people, and then that gave me
Yeah.
opportunity to learn a lot of skills from them,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I've never done genome-wide assessment study before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So most of the studies I had done was around candidate gene studies and all of that. So he opened
Yeah.
that opportunity for me. He introduced me to
Yeah.
a number of people, so I
Mm.
enjoyed that. So one of the things that has opened doors for me is collaborative network, you know.
Mm.
And then
Mm.
again, when I moved with when I started working with Professor Segun Fatumo, that also
Yeah.
continued,
Yeah.
every now and then, except I tell him, Segun, I'm busy, So
Yeah.
every opportunity he sees around, he pushes them my way. He connects me with
Yeah.
people. Shola, we need to work with
Yeah.
this person. What do you
Yeah.
think about?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it opens me up to different
Yeah.
opportunities. So I've really
Yeah.
enjoyed that. I've met a lot of people in this field
Yeah.
that I mean, I wouldn't have met them by myself, but
Yeah.
because somebody like Shegun had
Yeah.
introduced me to them,
Yeah.
so it opened that opportunity of access, with them. And when I'm
Yeah.
doing something now, I can
Yeah.
contact those people and then they can have input in my life. So,
Yeah.
so collaboration and having
Yes.
somebody to introduce you to people, that's very
People. Yeah.
important for career
Yeah.
development in any chosen field.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you, Shola, because a lot of times, in as much as we are focusing on training and building our technical expertise, a lot of times the skills that actually sell you are, who knows you, like you mentioned, like who can speak about you in a room of opportunity. And I think that's a very important point that you brought out. So people, as young scientists, they should learn, or, how can I grow my network? How can I, build a portfolio where someone can say, Ruth, I can trust her. If someone is looking for a bioinformatician, they can quickly say, have you spoken to Ruth? Do you know about Ruth? But then you have to have had to build, you have to have built a portfolio where people can actually trust and recommend you to other people and even connect you. But
You're right.
also, like going for opportunities that also expand your sort of like, networks, like conferences, symposiums, or, getting introduced, like the way you've mentioned, by your supervisors to people that, will be relevant for your career. So that's, thank you for bringing that out,
You're right.
Shola. And now I'm gonna jump into your work. I know you mentioned that you worked at the Sickle Cell Foundation in Nigeria. And now I don't know, you're doing genomics and probably mixing it up with single cell disease. Maybe can you speak to us about this and what excites you most about the work that you're doing?
Okay. Yeah, so with the work I've done on during my PhD, which I also continue with my first postdoc fellowship, it's been basically on sickle cell disease, and I'm really passionate about the disease because it affects a lot of us from Africa, and Nigeria has the highest burden of disease globally. So 50% of people who have the disease, they live in Nigeria. Okay. And at Sickle Cell Foundation in Nigeria, I was also
Yeah,
trained as a
yeah,
genetic counselor. So
yeah,
I'm a trained genetic counselor. I see patients, people with this disease. I see their families. I know how devastating it could be. And there are so
yeah,
many questions we can't not even explain. We don't have biology explanation for it. We don't have
yeah,
insights into it.
yeah,
And that gives me a lot of passion to say, look, we need to work on something that will improve the life of people with sickle cell disease.
yeah.
And then when I worked with Stefan, that passion also increased because Stefan Menzel, alongside with some other people, were the first people who discovered the gene that they are
Mm,
using for sickle cell therapy at the moment,
yeah,
BCL11A gene, which
yes,
they are using for sickle cell therapy. So they
yeah,
were the one that discovered it in 2007 at King's College. with
Yeah.
Professor Sulite. And I was very fortunate to be working with him. And then we are still doing a lot of things together. So
Yeah.
right now, we worked on a particular component of hemoglobin, which we call fetal hemoglobin,
Yeah.
which improves survival of individuals with sickle cell disease. So we just wanted to understand what are the genetic factors that determine how the hemoglobin level is expressed,
Yeah.
is retained in individuals with sickle cell disease. So this has not been done before in Nigeria, and it was the first one in West Africa and the second in the entire sub-Saharan Africa when we're doing the study. So
Yeah.
we just wanted to learn more about our population because we are so diverse as
Yeah.
a people, okay?
Yeah.
And what you get from Nigeria may be something different from what you get even in Ghana, that is in
Yeah.
West Africa, and let alone coming to Kenya or
Yeah.
Tanzania that are in East Africa,
Yeah.
So I'm passionate about learning more on things that have to do with disease and health of
Yeah.
African populations. So
Yeah.
specifically sickle cell disease in one area.
Yeah.
So now I'm working on a grant where we'll look at chronic kidney disease in patients
Yeah.
with sickle cell disease. What are the genetic factors that
Mm,
underpin this? So this
mm,
is an area which is very important to me at the moment. And yeah, so hopefully we'll be able to do more
yeah.
for people with the disease. The other thing which I do with Shegun is looking at chronic kidney disease
Yeah.
again in general African populations.
Yeah.
So in this case, we are not looking at continental Africa alone. We are looking at even the diaspora Africa. And there are
Yeah.
different data sets from the
Yeah.
US, from the UK, which we are leveraging to do this type of large-scale genetic analysis.
Yeah.
Yes, so we are doing that. And not only looking at the genetics alone, we're also looking at some other aspects, which we call multi-omics, other ways we can explain how these genetic factors affect people in terms of susceptibility to chronic kidney disease in
Yeah.
African population. So these are the things I'm doing at the moment. And apart
Yeah.
from that,
Yeah.
we are also working with our collaborator at University of Cambridge, where we
Yeah.
are looking at how better can we account for the diversity. Okay,
Mm,
for instance, in African population, when we are doing our data analysis,
yeah.
so because when you get data from Tanzania, you get data from Kenya, you get data from
Yeah.
Ghana, you get data from Nigeria, from South Africa, how do
Yeah.
you pull all this data together and
Yeah.
you will still be able to see the right effect? So
Yeah.
what are the things you should take note of, and what are the what's the best method of pulling this type of genetic data together, in a way
Yeah.
that will account for our heterogeneity, that will account for our diversity, So
Yeah.
we are developing that method. We have published a paper last year where we showed that we can include some environmental factors, even by saying whether the participants live in the urban area or they live in rural area. We can
Yeah.
include such little variable into the analysis, and then
Yeah.
it can give us a better picture of the people that we are trying to understand why they have this type of disease or why
Yeah.
their health status is like that,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we are doing work that relates to method development to
Yeah.
make our analysis better, not only for
Yeah.
us, for every
Mm,
scientist globally
yeah.
to be able to use that
Yeah.
kind of tool. So we
Yeah.
are doing that apart from large scale genome-wide
Mm,
adhesion study that we are doing in general African
yeah.
populations and the work I'm doing on sickle cell disease. So it's multifaceted.
Yeah, and I love that aspect of, multifacetation, and as well as, the interdisciplinary nature of the kind of research that you're doing.
Yeah,
If
you're
you'd
right.
like to learn more about this, Dr. Shola is on LinkedIn, he's on Twitter, and I see him post a lot about the work that he does. So you can follow him, and also, you can also send him a DM if this is something that, or an area of research that interests you, and I'm sure he'll be happy to respond to your queries.
Absolutely.
Dr. Shola, as an African, what do you think African-led research plays in shaping the future of healthcare? especially for African populations?
It's a very big question, you know.
Yes.
I know that there may be some people on the call who may not know that life actually started in Africa. Okay.
Yes.
Um, what that means is as people started moving out of Africa to Asia to Europe,
Yeah.
the diversity reduces as it leaves Africa,
Yeah.
but the diversity is retained in Africa.
Yeah.
So when you
Yeah.
look at our genetics, when you look at our DNA, there are a
Yeah.
lot of things you would see that you don't see in other populations.
Yeah.
Okay. And that also is as a result of our environment. Okay.
Yeah.
Because we are exposed to different infections or different diseases, for instance, malaria or trypanosomiasis, you know, which
Mm-hmm.
you don't see this in Europe, for instance. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so we still have a lot of things to learn from our DNA, from our genetics. Okay, as
Mm-hmm.
as Africans. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not going to benefit the Africans alone. It's going to benefit the
Yeah.
global population. Okay,
Yeah.
because when we look at our own genetic data, we'll be able to tell how why do we have some disease or why we don't have this disease, you know. So it
Yeah.
can help us well to understand, you know, about genetics across the globe. So
Yeah.
when we exclude African populations,
Yeah.
which is obvious in what we have at the moment, most of
Yeah.
the genetic data we have, they are from
Yeah.
European population. Okay,
Yes.
so that has excluded African populations a lot. So we only have little of African populations. So this is
Yeah.
not helping us to understand how to solve many problems, many diseases, you know.
Yeah.
So African populations will play a key role, but we
Yeah.
have so much relied on
Yeah.
investments coming
Yeah.
from abroad. So
Yeah.
we expect grants to come from NIH, to come from Wellcome Trust, while our government is not doing anything to sustain the project we are doing. You know, there was a wake-up call during COVID-19, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, it seems our government has gone back to sleep. So I think we still need a lot of investment from African leaders, you know, to
Yeah.
make sure that we have a lot of resources, infrastructure to be able to do good
Yeah.
science, to be able to do good research, because
Yeah.
this is the way the world is now. Because we are going to look at how to improve our health by seeing
Yeah.
what is in our genomics,
Yeah.
what are the things you are susceptible to and all of that. So we need that investment, you know, to be able to
Mm.
change the narratives, you know, around
Yeah.
the healthcare in Africa. And not only in
Mm.
Africa, but also around the globe. So Africa has a lot of role to play. And that's why
Yeah.
all of us, whether we're in diaspora or we are living in
Yeah.
continental Africa, we have to
Yeah.
brace up and make sure that we keep doing a lot of things to make sure we push
Yeah.
a lot of things forward, you know, to be able to make sure that whatever is coming from us is improving human
Yeah.
health.
Absolutely, absolutely. I totally agree. I'm not even going to add anything to that because you've highlighted everything in terms of diversity and what we can do as Africans, whether in the diaspora or in the continent. So we have Michael who says, hi, Ruth and Dr. Shola. I am John Michael from Pwani University, Kenya. Very informative and collaborative network. I think he was commenting on the discussion that we had. So
Okay,
if
thank
you
you.
have a question, so Sharon, I think, I don't know whether this is a question or comment. I'm just going to read it as it is. So Sharon Orr says, very insightful talk, Dr. Shola. What factors contribute to the predominance of sickle cell disease in Africa, including Nigeria, compared to other regions of the globe?
Oh, okay. So you will see a lot of people having sickle cell traits, which we call HBAS, okay, where malaria is endemic. Okay,
Mm,
so
mm,
if you look at sub-Saharan Africa populations, you know we have problem of malaria.
yeah,
Okay, so by way of surviving where there is malaria, that's when AS came into being, thousands of years ago. Now, if you have HBAS, okay, that is highly prevalent in a population, for instance, in Nigeria, 25% of the population is carrying hemoglobin AS.
Yeah.
So when somebody with hemoglobin AS marries another person that is having hemoglobin AS, for every time the woman is pregnant, there is 25% chance that the baby could carry sickle cell disease.
Yeah.
Okay. So where you have high prevalence of sickle cell trait, HBAS, then the likelihood of having high prevalence of sickle cell disease is there. Okay, so in Nigeria, we have about 3% of the population having sickle cell disease. And if you look at the population of Nigeria, which is around 200 or 250 million, if you do the statistics, finding 3% of 250 million, that tells you the number of people, which is more than
Yeah.
the number of many countries, So,
Yeah.
so that's why, so the population is huge in Nigeria,
Yeah.
over
Yeah.
200 million. And we have
Yes.
prevalence of AS that is very high,
Yeah.
nothing less than
Yeah.
25%. Then the
Yeah.
likelihood of having HBSS or HBSC, which are both
Yeah.
sickle cell
Yeah.
disease, is very high. So that's the reason.
Yeah. I hope that answers your question, Sharon. And thank you for sharing that, Shola. So I'm gonna jump into a non-science question and ask you if you could go back and speak to yourself as a student at Olabisi Onabanjo University, what would you say?
To be honest, it would be difficult for me to answer because,
Okay.
yeah, looking back at what I was doing that time,
Yeah.
I was very
Yeah.
busy as a student, okay, doing a lot of church activities and all of that, but it never
Yeah.
disturbed me from what I was pursuing academically,
Yeah.
So I put in my best. I knew what I wanted, even though I had financial challenges, I could go
Yeah.
days not sure of where the next meal will come from. Okay, so I had many
Mm,
challenges in terms of finances and all of that, but none of them
yeah.
disturbed me. So I was really focused on what I wanted and I went for it. So I don't think I would have wanted anything better than what I did.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm,
I put in my best because right from my university days, I've been somebody that is supportive of my peers,
yeah.
encouraging them and all of that. So I was really on
Mm,
top of the game. So I wouldn't want
mm.
anything better than what I did.
What you had. Okay, okay, that's also totally right. All right. And while we're still discussing that topic, is there, like a mistake or something that you did during your early career that you feel taught you a valuable lesson, that you've picked up or that is useful for you right now in your career? If there's nothing, then that's totally okay. But is there something that you feel like, I did this, but at least it taught me this, which is now useful for my career.
Um, to be honest, I can't think of any.
Mm,
It's possible I have, but I can't think of any. I
okay.
mean, for instance, in terms of career, like I told you, from 300 level, I had thought about it. I mean, I would want to focus on molecular biology.
Yeah,
And even though the lecturer was very hard to pass his course,
yeah,
unfriendly and all of that, but I still kept to my goal. I still
yeah,
pursued it.
yeah,
So, and I knew I wanted to go into the academia, and
yeah.
I went that path all along. So I'm not sure if there was any mistake.
Mm,
But
so
the other thing which,
is there like something that you would do different going back, or
yeah, so
you
what
feel like
I
the way everything worked out was totally okay?
Um, one, if in terms of, okay, for instance, when I wanted to do my PhD, I wanted to do something on microbial genetics,
Yeah,
you know, and that was the proposal I submitted for my PhD admission. So
Yeah.
before the admission, by the time I was getting admission into my PhD, I've got the job at the Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria as a
Yeah.
research scientist, molecular biologist, you know.
Yeah.
So that time, I saw that children as young as 2 years with sickle cell disease, they could have stroke.
Yeah.
So I said, what?
Mm.
2 years having stroke? I never heard of that before, you know. So that's really, really surprised me. I didn't know it's one of the complications of sickle cell disease. So I began to
Mm.
think, oh, okay, so there may be many more things to learn about sickle cell disease beyond what we learned in school that they usually have painful episodes and all of that.
Yeah.
So that was what fascinated me. And I quickly changed my mind. I wasn't going to do microbial genetics anymore. I was going to
Mm.
focus on sickle cell disease. And
Mm.
that's how I started. So it will have, I mean, so that was my first thing that changed my direction and that gave
Yeah.
me the
Yeah.
passion. And then I've pursued that all along. The
Mm.
other thing was before getting to study biochemistry, I was actually
Yeah.
pursuing pharmacy. Okay.
Okay.
So while I was in 300 level, I was still
Yeah.
having it in mind, maybe I should go for pharmacy. Then I thought
Mm.
about it. If I was going for, if I was going to do pharmacy,
Yeah. Yeah.
even at 300 level, maybe I should go back to 200 level, repeat 1 year in pharmacy. So I won't go to pharmacy 300 level because I will have missed a lot of courses they did in 200. So you have to start from 200. So I was
Yeah.
thinking maybe I could start. I tried a lot to do it, but it didn't come through. But
Yeah.
at some point, I just came up. I just talked to myself that even if I cross to pharmacy and all of that, I would still want to do something related to genomics, molecular biology. And I'm already
Yeah.
in biochemistry. I can achieve that goal. So why do I want to go back to pharmacy when I can achieve it while doing biochemistry?
Yeah.
And then I didn't change anymore. So I stayed on my biochemistry. Okay,
Mm.
so I mean, I'm not saying that it's not possible not to have made mistakes. I
Yeah.
must have made some mistakes and all of that.
Yeah.
But I can't just, maybe because I'm put on hot seats now, I couldn't remember.
Yes. Yes, that's
But I can't
totally
remember
okay. Yeah.
specifically one
Yeah.
major error that I had or mistakes that I had,
Yeah.
which I could have done better. And
Yeah.
then, for instance, while I was doing my PhD, I also thought about it, that in the years to come,
Yeah.
we're going to have data, massive
Yeah.
genomic data, proteomics, metabolomics, and all of that. So I knew we're going to have a lot of data and
Yeah.
we need to analyze it. So I
Yeah.
thought about it. There are two ways if I want to stay in biochemistry. Is
Yeah.
either I move into computational
Yeah.
genomics,
Yeah.
bioinformatics, statistical genetics, or I reinforce my skill in experimental biology, working in the lab and all of that, you know. But by the time I was getting my first postgraduate position, I was able to
Mm.
combine both.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I was able to do experimental work in the lab, and then I was able to do a lot of genetic epidemiology, statistical genetics,
Yeah.
like that. So for me, I think I had it in mind what I wanted, and
Yeah.
got so good to me. I've
Yeah.
been fortunate to be able to follow this path through.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So so Sharon says, thanks for the feedback. Sharon was the one that had asked about the predominance of sickle cell in Africa. So she says, thanks for the feedback. I'm joining from Cambridge. Welcome to us, Kilifi. Malaria is also prevalent in the western region of Kenya. So is sickle cell disease. And then we have a question from John. He says, Dr. Shola, please shed light on the role of alpha and beta thalassemia in the sickle cell trait in African population where malaria disease is endemic.
Okay. So first of all, the alpha thalassemia. So when you talk about thalassemia, generally we have what we call hemoglobinopathy, which contains whether it is thalassemia or sickle cell disease.
Yeah.
So sickle cell disease, there's a substitution. There's a change, okay, of one letter in our DNA, which changes amino acid, which now changes the entire protein. Okay. I'm
Yeah.
sorry for non-biology people on the
Yeah.
call. Okay.
Yeah.
So in the case of sickle cell disease, what you have is an abnormal structure of hemoglobin or unusual structure of hemoglobin. But in the case of thalassemia, whether it is alpha or beta, there's a reduced production of that gene, okay, of alpha or of beta. So when there's a reduced production, it affects the function, okay, and then could lead to different kinds of complications or disease. So in alpha thalassemia, there are different deletions that could make somebody that could characterize alpha thalassemia. But the predominant deletion is called alpha 3.7 deletion. Okay, that one is very prevalent in Africa. And we see it to be co-inherited with sickle cell disease. So when it is co-inherited with sickle cell disease, it helps people with sickle cell disease not to have some certain complications. For instance, those who have alpha thalassemia deletion and have sickle cell disease, the risk of stroke in those individuals is low, okay?
Yeah.
And from a study from Professor Ambrose Wonkam, where they studied in Cameroonian patients, they also found out that those who have that alpha thalassemia deletion with sickle cell disease, they have better survival, okay? And the hospitalization rate is also reduced in those people, okay? But it's not beneficial across all complications in sickle cell disease. Now, for beta thalassemia, you could have beta thalassemia to be inherited with hemoglobin S. So when hemoglobin S is inherited with beta thalassemia, so beta thalassemia could be beta major or beta trait. So beta major is beta naught, beta trait is beta plus. So if somebody has hemoglobin S with beta naught, the person would behave exactly like hemoglobin SS. The phenotypes are the same. But if somebody has hemoglobin S and beta thalassemia trait, which is beta plus, the person would have sickle cell disease that is similar to hemoglobin SC. So like somebody who is SC, their severity is lower compared to hemoglobin SS because in such individual with SC, only one hemoglobin, which is S, can sickle, okay, as against having both hemoglobin S that could sickle. Yeah, this is general explanation I could give this kind of atmosphere.
All right, thank you. And I hope that answers your question, John. I'm gonna take one final question from Sharon, who's asking, how are you applying single-cell technology and precision medicine to tackle single-cell disease and chronic kidney disease?
Single-cell technology or sickle cell?
I think she said single-cell.
Oh, single-cell. So we, at the moment, while I was at King's, we were doing a project where we were looking at reticulocytes, from the blood, which we are studying to see how we can learn more about how fetal hemoglobin is expressed, whether this also could be one of the ways we could provide therapy in sickle cell disease, because for most of the things that becomes relevant in clinics, we have to first of all see to understand the biology of it. So we are trying to look at it, how the retics could tell us more about fetal hemoglobin expression. So we're using single cell technology for that, to look at different populations of fetal hemoglobin through erythrocyte, through reticulocyte count. The paper was just accepted. I think in the next few weeks, we're going to get that published. So it's in collaboration with Dr. Stefan Mentel and other colleagues at King's College. So which was on single cell technology. Yeah.
Thank you. And Sharon, look out for that paper. It's gonna come out soon. So one final question from me, Shola. What is one thing you hope to see change in the African science ecosystem in the next 5 to 10 years?
Wow. I want massive skill development for
Yeah.
everyone who is interested in genomics, in
Yeah.
multi-omics in Africa.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Professor Segun Fatumo is at the forefront of that, developing
Yeah.
a lot of people in Africa, whether
Yeah.
it's in Uganda, in Nigeria, and all of that. And that's what I also want to see, that we develop this skill.
Yeah.
Not only that, I want to see massive infrastructural development,
Mm. Mm.
having access to cloud computing where we can do our data analysis
Yeah.
hosted by us in Africa.
Yeah.
And we are in control of our data, not
Yeah.
depending on anybody to come from
Yeah.
abroad. I
Yeah.
want to see this in Africa.
Yeah.
And want to see that we are at the forefront of science and
Mm.
we are generating high quality data. We are already
Yeah.
doing that at the moment, but we need to
Yeah.
improve that.
Yeah.
Professor Happy is doing a lot in infectious disease.
Yeah.
Professor Fatima is doing a lot in kidney disease.
Yeah.
Professor Mitchell Ramsey, Dr. Anayov in South Africa,
Yeah.
they are doing a lot of things, and many, many other researchers and great scientists in Africa that the time will not
Yeah.
permit me to mention. Yes,
Yeah.
but we need to do more, and
Yeah.
build a lot of capacity so that we will not be able to count how many people in Kenya or how many people in Nigeria have these skills. The skills
Mm.
are there, we can use it and use it to improve the lives of people. So my goal is we have massive data, we have massive skill development, we can do a
Yeah.
lot of things by ourselves
Yeah.
without depending on anybody from abroad. I want to see
Yeah.
a lot of funding coming from our countries,
Yeah.
our leaders investing a lot of money into science, into research.
Yeah.
And I also want to see how what we are doing is improving the lives of people. And I tell people when I teach them,
Yeah.
whether, I have, through Professor Fatima, I have different opportunities to teach different people in
Yeah.
Africa on different programs and all of that. And what I
Yeah.
teach is, look, whatever we are doing in genetic epidemiology or in statistical genetics is not
Yeah.
because of the number that we are looking for number. We want to see how to improve the lives of people. So
Yeah.
I want to see massive skill development, massive data, massive
Yeah.
infrastructure for genomics, for
Yeah.
proteomics, for metabolomics, which will
Yeah.
transform the lives of our people. That's what I want to
Yeah.
see in the next 5 to 10 years. And we can achieve it.
We definitely can achieve it. And I think this is a very good place to end this conversation. I'm not adding anything so that I don't spoil what you've shared. And that's a good closing remark from you, Shola. Thank you so much for, agreeing to be here today, sharing your experiences with us in this 1 hour. We truly appreciate. From the My Science Journey community, we say thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruth. I appreciate this opportunity to come here and share my experience, and hopefully we'll have many more things to share in the future. And I must also commend you with what you are doing to make sure that everybody would learn from other people, and then we can also see how to improve one another and create that community, that network of people of like
Yeah.
mind, and
Yeah.
push and advance science, advance human health in Africa and in continental Africa. So thank you very much for what you are doing on My Science Journey, and to your
Thank you.
entire team.
On behalf of MSJ team, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone that joined in today's live session. Remember, this is live on YouTube, so you can still access the recording of this conversation after the session. So feel free to come back and, listen back to the conversation that we've had today. Otherwise, I wish you all a very good morning, evening, afternoon, based on where you are in the world. And we will see you on the next My Science Journey session, which is actually next week. So look out for that flyer and details for the session. Goodbye.
Bye.
All right, that I have ended the stream. So
Okay,
you're
good,
good.
good.
You're
Yeah, I
good.
hope